All right, so while the kids are heading that way, we'll go ahead and get started. So this week, we're continuing our series on baggage. And I know this has been a long series. It feels like we've been in this series forever. And this has not been an easy series. We've talked about a lot of heavy topics. And today that thread's going to keep on going. The heavy topic train rolls on. But whenever you hear the word abuse, what do you think of? What comes in your mind when you hear the word abuse? What comes into your mind when you hear the word emotional baggage? What comes in your mind when you hear the word trauma? An emotional trauma. Those are tough words right there. Those are not things that we like to think about. Those are not things that we like to talk about. Those are the things that we like to brush under the carpet. Those are the things that, they didn't happen to me, so they don't really exist. But that's not really what happens. Because some of us, we have went through emotional abuse. We have went through emotional trauma. But more than likely, there are people that we know that have been through that emotional trauma, been through emotional abuse, and carry around emotional baggage with them throughout their lives. So we got to talk about this. These are tough topics that we have to talk about: emotional abuse and emotional trauma. We live in a broken and fallen world. We live in a world where sin is king, and people are selfish, and people are prideful, and we get hurt. But we also serve a God who is a God of healing and a God of love, and someone who wants to be there with us. So even though we go through tough times and we go through dark times and we carry around this emotional baggage, God is there for us. So this morning we're going to continue on with the difficult topics, and we're going to talk about emotional abuse and trauma. There are so many elements involved here, so many events and circumstances that can lead to emotional abuse and that can stem out of emotional abuse and trauma. We talked about the baggage of addiction. Addiction comes from, and many times, I'd say a vast majority of the time, addiction comes from emotional abuse, comes from emotional trauma, trying to bury that trauma. Emotional abuse is defined as this. Emotional abuse is any act, including confinement, isolation, verbal assault, humiliation, intimidation, infantilization, that's a tough word, or any other treatment which may diminish the sense of identity, dignity, and self-worth. These can include threats of violence, abandonment, intentionally frightening someone, making an individual fear that they will not receive the food or care that they need, lying to them, making derogatory or slanderous statements about that individual to others, socially isolating the individual, failing to let them have visitors, repeatedly raising the issue of death, telling an individual that they are too much trouble, ignoring or excessively criticizing them, being overfamiliar and disrespectful, unreasonably ordering an individual around, treating them like a servant or a child. You see, emotional abuse and emotional trauma, it has many, many, many layers. But it all comes down to intentionally diminishing a person's sense of identity and self-worth and their dignity. So it's easy to understand that emotional abuse can be difficult. It's easy to understand that emotional abuse and trauma can very simply become baggage. You carry that along with you. If you've been emotionally abused and you've been emotionally traumatized in your entire life, people have been telling you that you're not good enough or you're this terrible, horrible person, it's easy to see how that can turn into baggage that you will then in turn carry for the rest of your life. These are lasting marks that control who we are. These are lasting marks that make us who we are. It's a baggage that the emotionally abused carry around with them most times for their entire lives. And as terrible and as painful as that baggage is, it has to be put down, just like all of the other baggage that we've talked about through this series. It's not something that, happens once and for all. You just say, I'm going to put down this baggage of emotional abuse, and then you're good. It's not a one-time thing. It's definitely a process. You can't just wave a magic wand and the years of abuse and years of trauma just go away. It's a process, a difficult process, but a process that we have to go through. But here's the thing: our God is a loving God. Our God who created us and created the universe and everything in it is a God who loves us so desperately that He doesn't want any of us, to go through that. He's there for us and willing to walk through this life. Look what David said in Psalm 103. He said, as a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. As for man, his days are like grass. He flourishes like a flower of the field, for the wind passes over and it is gone, and its place knows it no more. But the steadfast love of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting for those who fear him, and his righteousness to the children's children and those who keep his covenant and remember to do his commandments. The Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and the kingdom rules over all. You see, God's steadfast and perfect love is forever with us. And this steadfast love of God is on those, even those who have been emotionally abused and have went through emotional trauma that we just can't understand unless we've been through it. So today we need to look at this emotional abuse and how to start a path of healing that God has laid out. This morning, I'm going to have a guest come up with me, just like last week, and we're going to keep it in the family again. But today, my partner, you want to come on? Today, my partner is my cousin, Daniel. And if some of y'all got a good memory and paid really good attention, Daniel was actually here about a year and a half ago, 2 Septembers ago, and he preached 1 week. You can set your paper there if you want. Yeah. I've got a lot of stuff. But Daniel is one of the associate ministers of the Life Point Church over in Louisville, and like me, he's actually currently a restaurant guy. I got out of it. He's still in it somehow. I don't know how. But Daniel and his wife Denise is sitting there. They have an unbelievable story, just an unbelievable story. And he told it when he was here, but it's been a while. So we'll hit a few of the highlights. But a few years ago, Daniel and Denise, their house got broken into. And they caught the people right away. And it was 2 or 3 young children, right? Three young boys, and they caught the people right away. So they had this choice to make of basically throwing the book at these these 3 and sending them away. But that's not what they did. It turns out like I said, they were very young, and instead of being angry and trying to convince the judge to put them under the jail, which is what most of us would have done, what they did was they tried to find a way to help these young people. They were upset, but they weren't upset that their house got broken into. They were upset that these young people were down a path where they felt like they had to break into someone's house. It didn't turn out in a way that they wanted to, where they could help these people. They tried really hard, but what they did was they found this heart for youth, and not just a heart for youth like most of us have, a heart for youth that are going down the wrong way, a heart for youth that are in the most vulnerable and broken places. So they started praying and looking for ways to do that, and God laid on their hearts foster care. Fostering children that had been taken away from their parents for any number of reasons. So here's Daniel and Denise entering into this unknown world of foster care, and they go through the classes, they go through the training, they go through the certifications, and then finally one night they get a phone call that they're getting placed with children. Not 1, not 2, but 3. 3 children in one day. And these children, and Daniel's going to talk a lot about this, were in a very, very rough place, a very, very bad place. Both parents had messed up so bad that they were out of the picture. The grandparents had tried, they'd messed up. So these 3 entered into the system and got placed with Daniel and Denise. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but the social worker even told me, he said, this is the worst case I've ever seen in my entire life. And doing this in all these years of social work, and here you all, your first time, good luck, basically. So Daniel, here's the first question that I want you to work us through. Tell us about the day that you guys met, the first 3.
All right, so the day that we first met the kids, we had accepted a few what are called referrals for kids that are in the foster care system. And when you accept a referral, it doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be placed with you. So we had accepted a few that ended up not getting placed with us, so we were kind of frustrated about that process. So that day when we woke up, when the kids were placed with us in August of 2014, the first thing Denise said when we got out of bed is, if we get a referral today, we're accepting it. And I said, are you sure you want to say that? And she said, if we get a referral today, we're accepting it. I said, all right, that's our answer. So I went to work. I was at a new restaurant. I had just sat down for my first manager meeting with the new management crew, and I get a phone call at the restaurant, which never happens, asking for me specifically. and go to the phone, leave the meeting, go to the phone, and it's Denise on the phone. And she said, hey, we just got a referral for 3 kids. I said, well, what do we want to say? And we talked about it for a second. I said, well, you started this day saying we're going to accept the referral that we get today. Let's accept it. She said, all right, let's accept it. So she called the social worker back and said, yes, we will accept this referral. And then she kind of didn't hear anything for a few minutes. So she was getting kind of antsy about that. And when she gets antsy, she likes to move. So she went shopping. She went to the Dollar Tree, right? Headed to the Dollar Tree like a lot of us would do. And while she was at the Dollar Tree shopping, had the basket full, the social worker called back and said, I think I forgot to call and tell you that the referral was accepted and we're on the way to your house. So Denise left the Dollar Tree without paying for the stuff, just left the basket there, and got to the house 5 minutes before the kids got there. 3 new kids, 10, 8, and 5. And that night she did bath time with them. She did homework with them. She fed them dinner that night and put them to bed in new strange beds with strange kids and with an adult they don't know. All the while I was at work till past midnight that night. She did everything on her own. And that was the first day. The things that I did was I tried to figure out what school they went to so that we could know where to go the next day. And Googled that, saw where we had to go. And then and that's how the first day went. We just made it work. That's what we did.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine just having just 3 new people in your house just all of a sudden. So you guys met the kids, and like you said, it was difficult. But as time went on, y'all started to learn more and more about the kids and learn more and more about their situation. Obviously, that first day, it all didn't come out that first day. You didn't learn everything about them that first day, but over time, you guys started to understand where they came from. And tell us about what they were going through before they got to you.
Yeah, so kids are no different from any of us. We're not going to go up to you and say, hi, my name's Daniel. I've had a horrible past. Let me tell you about it. So kids, they tell you small details at a time. It could be riding in a car listening to a song. It has nothing to do with what they're thinking about, and then they just tell you, oh yeah, this person abused me. Or I was in this situation with this person, let me tell you about that. So bits and pieces kept coming out. And if you use your worst imagination and then multiply that by whatever number you want to multiply it by, that's what these kids have been through. That's what I try to tell people. Domestic abuse, domestic violence, multiple fathers, multiple boyfriends in and out of the situation. Absolutely no stability. They were constantly moving back and forth across state lines to try to evade the law, for lack of a better purpose. Substantiated sexual abuse claims, substantiated sex trafficking claims, starvation tactics, physical abuse, emotional abuse, you name it, they went through it. 10, 8, and 5. So the baggage that Richie's talking about, the baggage that's up here, they literally carry that with them. It's full, they're full of baggage. They came to us that day with literally just the backpack that they took to school and the clothes that they were wearing. We had to wash those clothes that night so they could have school clothes the next day. All their stuff was at their biological grandparents' house. The biological grandparents told the social worker that you cannot take their stuff. I don't know how they had the authority to do that. If I was that social worker, my answer would have been, get out of my way or I'm calling the cops, I'm getting their stuff. I don't know how they had the authority to do that, but they literally came with no stuff to us, except they came with everything. They came with this baggage and more, carrying all the stuff that they wanted help for, some that they didn't want help for, and some that we just all had to work through as a new family, trying to learn each other, trying to know each other, and trying to just move past it.
So these kids and all 3 under the age of 10 that have been through this, and me and Daniel had lunch last week, and we were talking about it, and all the things that had happened, and we were just both just blown away, and growing up, we didn't think of anything like that. We had both of our parents were married to each other. They had they loved us unconditionally. We always knew that. We always had everything we need. It's just this and I would say 99% of us are in that boat, but then to, hear this stuff of having these kids come up in this situation is just, heartbreaking and mind-blowing and just painful to hear. So obviously there's a lot going on there, a lot going on. What were the biggest obstacles that you all faced, either, emotionally or behaviorally or, really anything at all?
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate y'all listening to the story today. I know it's not easy. The details aren't fun, but the gospel doesn't call us to comfort. It took me about 34 years to figure that out. I'm kind of slow. But the gospel doesn't call us to lives of comfort. So when these kids came into our house, the obstacles that we talk about were, first of all, it was a lack of trust. They didn't trust anybody. They didn't trust themselves. They didn't trust anybody around them. Every adult in their life had let them down, including people that saw abuse and didn't report it, or people that suspected abuse and did nothing about it. They were definitely afraid of all police officers. If they saw anybody in uniform, they would walk the other way or run the other way. That was a big thing. Anger. The anger was overwhelming, and all three of the kids displayed anger in different ways. And we have a fourth foster placement now, and she displays anger in a different way. But our youngest was angry at us because he didn't want. At first, he didn't want to leave the situation that he was in because he was kind of spoiled and protected from the abuse. The oldest two took the brunt of most of the abuse. Our the middle one was angry at the entire world, for lack of a better term, except for his bio mom. He kind of created an image of her in his mind that kind of helped. I think it helped him process and deal with what he was going through, but it wasn't really proper memory of what was going on. He kind of trumped her up and made the memories of her better than what she really was. So he was angry at everybody but her. And then our daughter was angry at everybody in her biological family, and that anger carried over into the people that are now close to her, and anger was just constantly spilling over. Anger and lies. Lies. I don't. We still have a problem with lying, and it's all goes back to a need to control. Their lives have been so out of control for their formative years that they grasp onto anything they control, and they can control what truth they tell you or what truth they don't tell you. And we still struggle with that. It's been a big struggle. It's getting better, but still struggle with it. Every single thing we deal with is difficult. Schooling is difficult. Schooling is really difficult. Extracurriculars are difficult just because of lack of being taught properly about social behaviors, how to interact with people. Even something as simple as starting them in a sport at the age of 10. Most kids start earlier, so their skills are already developed a little bit, so they're out of place there just to begin with. And they're not only out of place like on the field, but they're out of place socially. Everything's an issue. Holidays are a huge issue. Every holiday for the first year and a half was just an absolute train wreck. And it took a lot of reinforcement, a lot of discussions, a lot of therapy to get past holidays not being just a major issue. Leaving them in other people's care was just not advised for the first year, for the first 2 years. It just didn't work out well. Kids who suffer trauma get into routines, and the smallest abnormal thing can throw them off. Even something as simple as going on a day trip that can just throw them off their game, and they can just blow that situation up. And something that a lot of us don't like to talk about, we've dealt with a lot of mental health issues. So there's a lot of baggage carried with that. And they didn't ask for mental health issues, but when you're abused at such a young age and your brain is forming and developing, the abuse and neglect causes the brain to stop developing and stop developing correctly. So you can imagine how that will go with kids that are that young, whose brains are still forming, and they're still forming everything about how they see the world, how they see people, how they deal with situations. All that is adjusted in a bad way because of the trauma that they experience at a young age, and that really can't be reversed. It can be, you can try to reteach it, but you've heard the term that you can't teach a dog, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It goes along the same way with kids. When their brain's already developed a way that they've survived, it's literally survival is what makes them do that. That's been one of the biggest issues. They, on top of the lack of proper brain development and nurturing, they have several people in their biological family that we know of that have mental health issues, and that's a common theme in foster care too. So we're dealing with a whole lot there.
So that was a long answer for biggest obstacles. So, you guys, obviously you have your hands full. These kids have been, they've been through hell and back. Undescribable how bad it is and how bad it was, and how difficult it's been for you guys. And they have done an amazing job. You just couldn't do it any better. I'll say that. So we can kind of turn the corner here. In the last few years, where have you seen God working in their lives? Where have you seen the grace of God on them?
In several areas. So the transformation's been huge. The anger issues have gotten so much better over time, and that's a huge win for them, for our family. It's been really, really cool to see how they've adjusted to having grandparents, and I know that's simple. A lot of us don't think about that because it's just natural for a lot of us. But not only do they not have healthy parents, they didn't have healthy grandparents, and now with our family, they have two sets of grandparents that have poured into them, and including grandparents and aunts and uncles. So they have an extended family that actually cares about them now, and they've just thrived in that. They've embraced faith, they've embraced God, they've embraced religion. I've had the privilege of baptizing all three of them, and that just makes everything that they went through and we went through worth it. And it's just been awesome. They've transformed in so many ways, and it's been really, really cool to see. It's fun to see. Our daughter told us that before she knew there was a God, when she was going through the abuse, she cried out to God, which it kind of shows you how natural. Like if you haven't been told about God, you can look at nature and you can look at the world and you can look at people and see that something or somebody, God created this. So she cried out, before she even was told about God, she cried out to God for help, a God that she didn't know. And to see her transformation like she sees God modeled in a healthy way, and now she has an active relationship with God, that's been really, really good to see.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question that's off the book. Sorry about that. So, like you said, all three have embraced faith and have been baptized. What would you say the odds of them embracing faith and being baptized if they wouldn't have come into your care or into really the foster system at all?
Before they were 18, probably the 0. Now, if they had met somebody after that point in time, when they got out of their biological family situation and when they were adults, hopefully somebody in the church or a friend could have reached out to them. But I would say next to nothing.
There you go.
Then.
There you go. All right, so like you said, all three started out in foster care, but they're not still there now. They're not in foster care anymore. Yeah. So and the good part about that is they're not in foster care. They're actually officially adopted and are officially your all's children. Let's get through this. Sorry. I'm setting you up for failure. Good luck, sucker. So tell us about the adoption. Yeah, right. So tell us about the adoption and the future as best you can see it. So,
all right.
Shut up.
So, adoption day, like he already ruined it, was June 26th of last year, and it was an awesome day. It's the day that the kids look forward to for a while. They have been asking us to adopt them. All right.
Sorry, can you not do it with a picture up there? I'm sorry.
So, my most special memory of adoption day was we had a huge amount of people there, and it reinforced us. We like to call them our village, the kids' village. The kids' village is huge. There was over 50 people at adoption, and so the judge came out of chambers, and she didn't really see what was going on, but she walked out, and there was 50 people in a courtroom that could hold maybe 50 people, and she stepped out and just stopped and was like, she had never seen that many people in adoption before, and that was a really, really special moment. It shows that, to me, that encouragement gives us hope to keep going, and the kids hope to keep going. One cool full circle moment at Adoption Day was Earl Mullins being the adoption lawyer. He also was the minister at our wedding, Denise and I's wedding, and it was kind of full circle for him to marry us and then be the lawyer that adopted our kids. That was awesome. One other special thing about the Adoption Day was, and this was not planned, and we didn't even realize it till later that day, but there was so many people in that room of that 50 who had already been touched by adoption or who had been adopted themselves. So my dad, both his parents passed away before he was 4 years old. He was adopted by his grandparent. My sister-in-law, Amanda, was adopted by her stepdad because her biological father walked out of the picture. Miss Phyllis was there supporting us, and she's been adopted. One of we're friends with a family named the Boones. They did a domestic adoption and adopted Maisie. My brother and sister-in-law have adopted 2 kids from Ethiopia. One of them was there. There's a guy in our church named Josh Stevens who serves in our kids ministry. He was adopted out of the foster care system. So unintentionally, all like 25% of the people that were in that room that day had been adopted. And it's so cool to see how God worked that situation out. These kids have a village around them of people that have experienced what they've experienced and that have carried the emotional baggage that they've carried. So that gives us hope for the future. So you touched on the future there. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that the future is possible now for these kids, and that's big. I don't want to say we gave that to them, because God kind of pushed us into this. God was working on us for way more than just through the training process of foster care. There were so many things and so many people that got us into what God wanted us to do, including infertility, including praying a simple prayer like, God, use us. How do you want to use us? And just simple big things like that added up to this day, to Adoption Day. Oh, and
the best one. I stole their hearts. Now I'm stealing their last name.
Yeah, we had a great photographer too that day, by the way. We appreciate you, bro.
You had something there to make everybody smile and laugh.
That's true.
So, there you go. All right, so we talk about the future. I would say the future is definitely bright. It's definitely brighter than it would have been. What would you say to this? This is kind of open-ended. What would you say to someone who has emotional baggage or who has walked through that trauma or has walked through that abuse in their past? What would you say to them?
So the first thing I would say is very, very basic. God loves you, and God created you for a reason. You can rewrite what happened to you. I know that's not fun. I didn't really experience any abuse or trauma growing up, thank God, and thank my parents that are sitting here. So it's easy for me to say that, but you are not what happened to you. And it's what I keep trying to teach our kids. One day it's going to click for them. You are not what happened to you. You just happen to be in the wrong situation with the wrong people around you who happen to be stronger than you physically, and they could impose their will on you. It's as simple as that. And I tried, and that's my way of trying to get them to remove whatever guilt they have from that situation. Kids carry a lot of guilt, emotional baggage of guilt for what happened to them, and you're not what happened to you. God has a plan. I know that's easy for me to sit here and say, but I firmly believe that these three and whoever else comes in our lives, the kid we have in foster care now, I believe that God is going to use their story in a huge way to help other people. I really do. And honestly, we wouldn't be in that. If we wouldn't be in this situation, we wouldn't stay in this situation if we didn't believe that with all our hearts.
Very good. All right, last question, very last question. And this is like the $1 million question. What is, and we've asked this question a lot through this series, what is the church's role in this topic? What is the church's role in emotional baggage, emotional trauma, emotional abuse? What does the church need to be doing that it's not doing?
All right, so that's a loaded question, but today is a great start because you all are willing to tackle topics and have a sermon series of baggage that a lot of churches aren't willing to take. So I appreciate that. First of all, I want to say thank you for having us today, because there's always, we've been here a few times. There's always a spirit here, and you can feel the Holy Spirit here, but you can also feel a spirit of love and encouragement and acceptance. And I really appreciate that. I know that you are being led right now into a year of service and year of outreach. That's awesome. And those kind of things will help the situation that we're talking about of emotional baggage, because as you continue to reach out and as you continue to serve outside of your walls, people with baggage will come in. So the conversation that I was having with Richie earlier, because you've given a sermon on addiction. I said, are any of your families in your church now suffering from addiction? And he said, not many, maybe one, maybe two. First of all, that's awesome, because the statistics in Southern Indiana say that addiction is rampant right now. And that's awesome, but be prepared and start praying now, because as you reach out and as you serve, the people will come, and there will be more baggage than this here on the stage. Now, the spirit that's here, I know you are ready for that. I know you are ready for that because of the acceptance that we feel, and I know that you will accept other people into that too. But be ready and pray ahead of time. I asked several social workers to give me feedback about the church's role in this as I got prepared for this. And the one theme that I got from several people is you don't have to have gone through what people have gone through to reach out to them. That's really important to me, because I didn't go through what I'm trying to help these kids through. I know that my wife's okay with me saying this. She did go through one situation when she was growing up that was a sexual abuse situation, and she always wondered, why did this happen to me? She carried guilt from it like everybody else. And when we brought these kids into our house, particularly our daughter, that she could speak life into, that kind of made sense on why she went through that, because she can reach out to her. But you don't that doesn't have to be your story. If it didn't happen to you, you can still reach out. You can still love them. And difficult situations, if I share with friends or share with my parents or something like that, they'll ask me, what's the next thing you're going to do? What are you going to do? And my answer is, I'm going to love them. I don't know what else to do. I'm not that smart. I don't have this thing all figured out. I'm just going to keep loving them and see what happens. And I think that's the church's role too, to just keep loving people. Be open, be honest. If you have been the victim, if you're carrying emotional baggage, I would urge you to get support, and that you too need to be open and honest in a healthy way with a therapist, or you can start right here with Richie, your minister. He can step you through some things or get you the help that you need, point you in the right direction. But it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach. I know we're not particularly just talking about foster care, but there's so much emotional baggage on foster care, and that's our ministry. When we started the world of foster care less than 4 years ago, there were 6,800 kids in foster care in the state of Kentucky. Those numbers have been reversed. It's now 8,600. So just in the last 3 years, due to what you've already talked about, addiction, the opioid addictions, the heroin addictions, that number is up almost 2,000. And guess what? If people were really diligent and reporting what they really need to report, and if all those things were in place, it'd be way more than 8,600. Guarantee it. It'd be well over 10,000. All those kids carry baggage. All the parents that have those kids carry baggage. And it's just a situation where the church has to step up. I want to ask one question before I close my part. How many in here work with kids? Teachers, kids ministry, coaches, lawyers? Anybody that works with kids, just raise your hand. You are the church, and you are the ones that are going to help solve this problem. All right? Be aware. Things like this bring awareness and bring diligence. But if you need any help, I'm here. If you need help, Richie's here. But just don't be afraid to confront problems. Don't be prone to look the other way. If you see a problem, if your gut tells you something's wrong, do something about it. All right, there's resources to do that. Just be the church. The last thing that I challenge our team with, and I'll challenge you with today, is I call it the Matthew 9:38 challenge. and it's the verse 937 and 938 talk about the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. When it comes to emotional baggage, that cannot be more true. So that's what 937 says. 938 is the challenge. The first thing, the challenge in 938 is so pray. And we all have to pray. We have to pray these problems away. We have to pray, and then when God gives us direction on how to act on that, we got to act. So I issue the Matthew 9:38 challenge to you today. Pray how God can use you, and then when He tells you, which He will, He'll always answer it. Answer that call.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yes, pray it. Pray it and be ready to do it. I want to leave you with one thing that me and Daniel talked about this verse. This is from Paul from Romans 8. He says, "So then, brothers, we are debtors not to the flesh, living according to the flesh. But if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. You did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit Himself bears with the witness, in the Spirit we are children of God, and if children, then heirs, and heirs of God, and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with Him in order to be glorified with Him." I love this verse. Because really we're all in the foster system. And we're all here to be adopted by God. So this morning, I just want to reach out if you've been through this, if you've been a victim of emotional trauma or emotional abuse or any type of abuse, find a way to get help. Come talk to me, we'll get you in the right spot. Don't carry that baggage around with you anymore. Our mission here on this earth is too important to be bogged down by this baggage. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. But God is a God of healing. Give it to God and allow Him to bring you comfort. And if you're here this morning, maybe you've never been through that. Maybe you're like me and Daniel. You've never been through emotional abuse. You've never been through this trauma. Life has been roses. It's been great. Be there for someone. Be the church. Be brave enough to pray those dangerous prayers like, "God, use me." Be ready and willing to follow God's call. And if you're here this morning, you've never accepted Jesus, it's a good time to do it. We're going to sing a song of invitation and a song of worship. It's a good time to come forward. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today. And it was a difficult topic that we don't like to talk about, but that we need to talk about. Because we live in this broken and sin-filled world. We're going to meet people and come across people and be people who have been abused, who have went through trauma, and who are carrying this baggage. And God, we pray that you can use us as the church to point them to you, the one true healer, the one who can bring peace, the one who can bring comfort. And then we can point them to you and how you are the only one that we need and the one that we need the most. Be with us now in this time of worship. Let us raise your name high. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.